I'm sorry you can't see me. I've no idea what's wrong with my camera, but I'll try and sort it out before tomorrow's session. The Small Business Commissioner was set up in 2017. The office was designed to, in simple terms, support small business suffering with late payment from large business. And I believe we have three key roles. The first is to offer support, advice, and signposting to small businesses that are struggling to get paid by their larger customers. So we have a team of caseworkers who will talk to people either by email, through the web, or over the phone, and provide support and advice on an individual basis. And if they ring in and their case is assigned, they have an assigned caseworker who sticks with them throughout the life of the case. And we are there to give advice, and to where we can't help, signpost them to someone who can. And currently one of our sort of core roles is trying to navigate through the reams of advice that are out there in terms of loans and CBILS and all these things, and point people in the right direction. The second element that we do is mediation and investigation. So we signpost people to mediation services, but quite often a small business rings up because they're struggling to get their large customer to pay. So my team can make a call to that customer and can often have a bigger impact than the individual small business can. And indeed, over the last few days, as a result of webinars I've been involved in, individual cases and run a customer and got payment within an hour for somebody. So that's a sort of really practical role that we play. And so far we've collected £6.7 million on that basis. We also have the power to investigate poor practice. So where we find evidence of poor payment practice, we can investigate that and we can issue non-binding recommendations to the business. So we issue reports when we find behaviour that we think is unhelpful for the small business community. And we've published about 8 of those so far, and we're about to do another one. And we use those as a way to disincentivize businesses from doing the wrong thing, and to work with them to improve their practice. So having issued a report, we go back to them and meet with them subsequently to make sure they're putting in place the corrective actions that we think that we recommended were necessary to improve the way they treat their supply chain and pay their suppliers. And the third element is our remit to change the culture of late payment across the UK. And that involves a lot of media activity and work to, if you like, preach the mantra of doing the right thing as far as suppliers are concerned. And we are, today, I'm writing to a number of businesses where we've been advised and seen evidence that they are issuing a blanket notice to all their suppliers, telling them they're not going to be paid or payments going to be delayed, and asking them to consider the impact that they have on particularly micro businesses, and to be more communicative and to have conversations rather than just issue pronouncements. The point we're trying to make is that for a big business not paying, they can ease their cash flow by not paying somebody, but for the micro business that might mean they can't put food on the table, and they need to consider the impact they have. So we're trying to move away from the transactional to humanize this stuff, and our big sort of my big signpost at the moment is telling people to be collaborational rather than confrontational in their dealings with their supply chain. I think that's it for me, Carol, so over to you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so if we open up the floor for any questions that people would like to ask. Tracy, did you want to go first? Tracy Moore, you've raised your hand.
Thank you. Yes. Hi, Philip. Just understanding on that kind of spectrum where you're talking about late payments, because some of the businesses that we're talking to at the moment have had orders cancelled. So it's not about getting payment. Well, it is sometimes we get payment for services that have been delivered or products that have been delivered, but those that are sitting on stock that larger businesses have ordered and then kind of in the last, well, couple of weeks or so, they've stopped that order, which has had a huge impact on the small businesses that we're working with. Is that something that you are looking to, or is there anything you can do there, or is it?
This is a common problem that we're seeing repeatedly, and I saw a really difficult example yesterday afternoon. I think that the challenge here is that I guess it depends on the terms and conditions under which businesses are trading. If they have the right to cancel, they have the right to cancel, and that's an unfortunate consequence for the supplier, but it's not anything they have any redress for. In some cases they might have, but my point to businesses that share this sort of story with me is that they really need to have conversations with their customers and their suppliers. I think we're all in this together. You know, everybody is having to be flexible. Everyone is having to take decisions that they wouldn't normally take. And I think it's really important that we have honest conversations with people. And my advice to a small business that's suffered from a large catastrophic order cancellation would be to talk to the customer that's cancelled that order, have a conversation and get them to understand the consequences of what they've done, and to see whether there's any way, any middle ground under which something can be done that might alleviate the situation on both sides. And that might mean, you know, retaining the order for a future time. It might mean reducing the order. It might be arranging for, you know, some sort of token payment to support or something. But I think what's really important is that people are talking to each other and recognizing the impacts that their actions are having and finding ways to find the best solution in a situation which actually for everybody is unpalatable. But, you know, we need to measure the impact and try and do the best we can to alleviate it. So it's not an answer, I'm afraid, but I think
no, that is useful. I mean, that is kind of, yeah, that's the advice we've been giving. I think, unfortunately, the people that they're talking to aren't the decision makers. They're not the ones making the strategic decision in the response to COVID-19 within the large organisations. But thank you.
Yeah, I think, so if I may say, the letter I'm writing today is out to the chief execs, and it's saying to those businesses, you know, just make sure your teams are thinking in this way, because quite often what we're finding, and this is true of the issue we're seeing highlighted this morning about the banks, at the top level, everyone knows what they should be doing and is trying to do it, but getting that down to the ground floor troops is proving somewhat difficult. And I think we just need to make sure that businesses are taking into account everything they're doing and making sure they do the best they can. And at the end of this, when we come out of this, you know, businesses want to continue trading and want to continue trading in a climate of trust. And we can do a lot to build that trust through this difficult period.
Okay. Pauline, you've raised your hand. Did you want to go next?
Yes, please. Philip, sort of similar situation. I've been hearing from some smaller construction companies. So you're talking about the sole traders that, you know, they might have an account with a large multinational organisation that supplies, you know, their materials. And I've been hearing stories that some of these larger organisations are counselling credit terms. So in other words, if a small business owner has got, say, a £10,000 account with one of these large organisations, they're now suspending that and saying that, you know, all amounts need to be paid in full before we'll supply you with any, you know, other goods to allow you to continue, you know, trading. So, you know, I find that a little bit distasteful, particularly from some of these big multinationals, to do that to the smaller business.
I think you're absolutely right, Pauline, and I think this is really a continuation of the same theme as Tracy and I were talking about, isn't it? You know, it's getting businesses to recognise the impact that they have, and when I talk to large businesses, you know, often for them this is a transactional thing. It's lines on a spreadsheet, and it's, you know, it's a few quid in the bank account and cash flow, and they don't think about it in humanistic terms. And, you know, for small sole traders who are, you know, trying to buy stuff or to sell stuff or provide a service, this is absolutely devastating. And one of the things that my letter today is going to be saying to people is, you know, this isn't just about finance. this is also about mental health, it's about well-being, it's about, you know, family security, and a whole host of things that sit outside the financial issues. And for me, the payment of invoices is the manifestation of the bigger picture. And what we don't see is what the impact is on the individuals within that landscape. And I think it's down to all of us to try and keep pushing that message out and getting large businesses to take into account the wider and the more granular picture of what they're doing to the people around them, who will remember this, you know, when this is all over. So, you know, it's in their interest to behave well.
Okay, John Kay.
Trying to work out as I go. This is the first group I've done. Hi, I'm not sure if this is the correct sort of format or place to ask. I just figured there's a good group of people here. But I'm a small business owner. As with a lot of people, last Monday changed things a lot for everybody, where we suddenly had the obligation to close. The week before, we saw our sort of customer numbers drop by like 80%. So it was a fairly straightforward decision to protect our staff under the furlough scheme. But at the moment, we're kind of almost in limbo with a lack of information from anybody above as to where we sit, because currently as it stands, it looks quite bleak that we won't be eligible for any kind of support based on our categorization, which is a dog daycare. But we operate from a large warehouse. We have a lot of overheads. I have 9 members of staff who are thankfully I've furloughed, so they're all looked after for the short term. But with the almost indefinite timeline of how we're going to be like this, without any kind of support from sort of local council or the government, and I know that I'm not alone because I've spoken to a lot of people, where we fit almost in between the cracks of leisure, tourism, retail. We kind of tick a lot of those boxes, but the council aren't necessarily seeing us as that because we don't have a defined, clear category. We're almost like a zero category on our zip code, I think it is. So, like I said, I don't know if anyone has necessarily the answer here, but it's kind of like asking lots of people the same question, but not really getting any progress or clear answers.
I think, John, you know, everyone's in a similar situation in that there's the high level detail has been announced, and we've all welcomed the things that have been done, but in reality, the rules and the detail are still filtering their way down to the system, and there's a lot of misinformation out there, and there's an awful lack of clarity around what is available and what isn't, and in what circumstances and where and so on. And I'm having lots of calls with conversations like yours, and all I would say is that increasingly councils are getting to grips, and local authorities and local enterprise partnerships are getting to grips with what's going on, and their websites are being updated regularly with more information, so keep watching them. Gov.uk helpline website, if you follow the What's Doing COVID piece, has a whole list of sections on all sorts of stuff, and I get updates whenever that's updated, and I get an update almost every 10 minutes saying something else has been changed on it. And the business support.gov.uk website has got a lot more granular detail about what's available. But I think the honest answer, John, right now is, you know, we're all in the same state of limbo, and we've got to just keep sort of pushing our way through it and waiting for stuff to filter down.
Do you suspect... Sorry, go on.
No, go on.
I was going to say, do you suspect that there'll be more clarity? Because at the moment it seems almost very category driven so far as what business is affected, but there's a lot of businesses that don't fall naturally in those, that have had to close, that have lost all of their customers, that have no income but have large overhead burdens that they're going to have to sustain for a while. And me personally, I've furloughed myself. There's a question over my director responsibilities, what I can and can't do, but the furlough money, I'm as with many small businesses, you're on the minimum PAYE because we're a small business startup in effect. So we won't receive much from that, but all of that is actually going to pay my overheads towards some of it to sort of ease the burden. Do you think there's going to be sort of a loosening of the categories? Because there's lots of businesses that don't necessarily fall under leisure, tourism, retail, that have had a massive hit and are looking at all the advice, and there's nothing saying that anything's going to change.
Can I just jump in? Sorry,
yeah, please do.
I was just going to jump in there because I have looked extensively into what is on offer in West Suffolk, and maybe we could take this, you know, offline afterwards if you'd like to speak to me.
Yeah, please.
But I'm just thinking in terms of there is a £10,000 grant And it's to do with how much you pay in rate.
The rateable value, we're over
one.
that rateable value.
You're over it. Okay.
Yeah, so we would fall in the category above, but that's where the explicit categories are leisure, tourism, retail. So I would argue that we could fall under some of those because we do have a retail offering and we are a leisure thing, but a lot of people probably just look at us with just a dog daycare. But we look after a lot of people's dogs and help a lot of people by doing it.
John, you might want to just register a call out from West Suffolk Council because they're getting back to people.
Yeah,
have they done that? You have.
I've spoken to them direct because I was worried I was waiting for we'll speak about this later because I'm sure this doesn't affect everybody else.
I'm just trying to
I would love to. I'd love to have a chat afterwards if that's possible.
Okay.
Thank you.
I think on the more generic point, John, that you raised, and I think what we're seeing is that when the budget was announced, however long ago that was now, was it 3 weeks ago? We all thought, it was pretty mega. Within 10 days, it had been sort of put into almost triviality by what was announced following. And every day we're seeing new things happening and new changes introduced. And I think, government is learning on its feet, so are local authorities. And I think, we will, over the future days, see an increasing number of changes and, amendments and modifications. So I think the answer to your question was, yes, we will see more changes, but whether they'll benefit you, we have to wait and see, I guess. But I think it's the other thing I would say to you in terms of your overheads commitment and your concern there is that I think we are all in a state of uncertainty, and all businesses are going through differing degrees of pain on this. And I think that what we're going to see is that suppliers and landlords and the people are going to have to take a more flexible and pragmatic view about stuff, because post this crisis, they have the choice of either having a customer having been through some pain with them, or not having a customer who's collapsed as a result of it. And I would have thought that most businesses will be saying, you know what, we'd rather keep the customer even if we've had some pain in the interim period. So I think there's an incentive for businesses to take a flexible and pragmatic approach. And I think I would go back to my earlier point, which is, make sure you're having plenty of conversations so that people are aware of what's going on and so on. And where you can, confirm conversations in writing so that if things become a bit clearer and people start being a bit more pedantic, you've got something in writing that says, agrees what they said.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Sarah Williams.
Hi, yes, my point is slightly different in that I've been contacted by a company today who are really doing all the right things by their supply chain. They're a medium-sized business. They're paying them early. They are really giving a commitment to all of their supply chain. Their concern is that the money that they want, that they need in terms of loans, guarantee, and grants and furloughing staff is taking so long to come through that they may have to renege on some of those agreements that they've already put forward because things aren't happening fast enough. So it's really just an appeal really to kind of put pressure on the government to make sure that these things are happening faster, because otherwise there are going to be a whole lot of other unintended consequences as well.
That's a really good point, Sarah, and it's a common concern. And I think government is as concerned as businesses about the delays. I mean, I will share with you that I know one government support team that took as many calls last Monday as they normally take in an entire year. And they're doing that obviously with reduced levels of staff because of the isolation and so on. So, everybody's under immense pressure trying to get this stuff done. And I think we have to recognise that a lot of these schemes are completely different in a completely uncharted waters from where we've been before. So this is around people trying to build and develop schemes from a sort of clean sheet of paper. But I mean, clearly, we're putting pressure on government to do this stuff as quickly as they can, and government is simply pushing pressure downwards. And I think everyone recognises the need that, the delay is if not careful, terminal. And the people this morning are carrying details around, the issue with the COBOL loans from banks that are causing a real problem. And we all need to pull together and do everything we can to speed this stuff up.
Could I just ask for people to mute their microphones if they're not talking, because there's quite a bit of background noise and makes it a bit difficult for everybody to hear. Thank you. Okay, the next one who's put the hand up is Paula from Ipswich.
Hi. Like I said, I'm the owner of an indoor karting centre, but also represent 130 tracks across the country in my chairmanship role. We're leisure industry, but because our centres are in large premises, we're above any of the grant help that's available. We're obviously trying to pay our suppliers, but we've got added pressure because we take prepayments for events in our industry, and obviously we're forced to close. We can't run those events, so we've got customers that are, you know, requesting their money back. Some are happy to postpone, but a high proportion are wanting their money back because they've got their own financial issues. So we've kind of got a double whammy, if you like, in that we've got high overheads, we've got bills to pay. We can access the PAYE support, but that's not coming in, obviously, you know, for weeks. And then we've also got the pressure of customers wanting refunds, and we've got absolutely zero money coming in. So it's all kind of a knock-on effect, and, you know, just we don't really know where to go with it, because we understand that we're supposed to pay the customers their refunds back because they're entitled to it, because we haven't been able to run the events, but that obviously has a knock-on effect of who we can pay and on our cash flow. So just any advice, really.
Well, it's a real problem, isn't it? Because it's pressure from every different side, and you're sort of left in the middle and wondering what to do. And I'm not sure there's an answer I can give. My only advice would be to be as creative as you can. And I was talking to somebody the other day, not in your business, but in a similar sort of approach, where what they were doing was trying to offer customers, rather than have a refund, add some incentive to rather than just delay the booking. But if you do that, there's something more you can get. I don't know what that something more might be in your field, but if that enables you to hang on to the deposits and save them for the future rather than have to give them back, that's worth considering. And I think that we all need to be thinking as widely as we can about alternative approaches to things, and, you know, anything we can do that slows down the flow of cash legitimately is worth doing. And if I was one of your customers and you said to me, you know, if you leave the booking and just delay it, and you can have, I don't know, an extra 2 cars, or, you know, a longer period of time when you do have the booking, that might be enough to keep me on track, and it might be enough to save me asking you for a refund. Worth thinking about.
That, you know, our members they're already doing that, you know, and some people are taking up those offers, but obviously people have got their pressures, and a lot of people aren't willing to do that, and we're concerned because we're one of the first groups to close, and we suspect we'll be one of the last sectors to be allowed to be open, and we're just trying to get the message out there that we need more support, because we're above all of the grant stuff that's available because of the size of our centres.
Yeah, it's a challenge, isn't it? Well, I mean, I think there are a number of areas of business that are not covered by the schemes, and that's that clearly is. And I've raised several categories with Treasury this week, just dropping notes and said, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? And I think the teams are looking at all of these things. So if you've got a particular concern and you think you're being left out for a particular reason, then by all means get Carol the details and send them across to me, and I can feed them in. I don't have any influence, but I can feed them in at least. And I'm happy to do that.
That's great, thank you.
Okay, I've got Lisa, if Lisa McCants, if you wanted to ask, and then Mark, you can be next. Yeah.
Thanks, Carol. I think my question's been partly answered. I was going to ask about what's being done in relation to commercial landlords. So I guess it's a plea that something a bit more substantial could be done at a national level, because I think there's only a certain amount of goodwill that will pass between landlords and tenants in this particular scenario. And we're at the moment trying to negotiate, you know, what we do with the desks that we have a license for the clear message back is there's nothing to support us from government, so until such time we can't do anything differently for you. So it's just a plea that something a bit more substantial is done, or a bigger conversation can be had with some of those commercial landlords that might not fit the category of the letter that you're going to be sending out to the chief execs.
Okay, all right, thank you, take it on board.
Okay, Mark, did you want to go next?
Thanks, Carol. Yeah, just some feedback really, Philip, just from my experience, which is sort of the small end of small business, more micro, but I'm picking up some of the points that have already been made. But on the rates support, on the rate scheme, a lot of businesses who are in service offices fall outside that support. It seems a bit unfair. What I'm seeing is that a lot of landlords have been completely inflexible. They're refusing to defer rent, or if they are, they're insisting that it gets repaid at a later date, which I think is just, you know, impractical, and I think they'll probably come back to haunt them. The banks, where people are, I think John made a point about the furlough scheme, the amount of time to get the money, where people are then going to the banks to get a short-term loan, the banks are insisting on security and personal guarantees. By the time they've got those in place, the business will have gone bust. So although they're supposed to be being flexible, they're not at all in, from what I'm seeing. And then just support for small businesses where they fall in between the cracks. So self-employed who started in late 1819 or set up in 1920 are getting little or no support at all. And owner-managed directors, where, you know, they may have started recently or they're paying themselves via small salary and dividends, they're completely outside the scope of any support. And the £94.25 on universal credit isn't really going to enable them to keep their businesses afloat. As John said, he's using some of his money to pay his overheads. So it's just some feedback really from what I'm seeing from all the businesses I'm talking to at the moment.
Thanks, Mark. I mean, I think all those points are very valid, and you're absolutely right. I mean, I think taking the banks, they've got an absolute hammering on the news and in the papers this morning. I don't know if you've read it, but they're being castigated for pointing people at their standard schemes rather than the CBIL scheme, which means they can get personal guarantees and higher rates of interest and so on. And I think we're going to see some reaction from government to that today, and I suspect that the FCA or the PRA or somebody is going to talk to the banks and say, you know, you've got to do better. So I hope that's going to happen. The rates issue has come up actually every single morning so far this week.
It has, hasn't it?
And it's interesting. I think that the point here is that where businesses are not paying rents and the landlord is effectively paying the rates sort of centrally, therefore the businesses can't get any support. I've certainly pushed that into government in a couple of different directions this week, and I'm hoping they'll be looking at that. I think landlords are showing a level of inflexibility which is unhelpful, and I sort of hope that they will wake up and smell the coffee pretty soon, which is that if they're too inflexible, they will have no tenant at the end of this, and the number of businesses clamouring for their space is going to be pretty limited. So they are, you know, they're in quite grave danger of cutting their own revenue streams down for the future if they're not careful. And I think that will create an element of enforced flexibility, even if they don't want to do it. And the self-employed sole director issue again came up yesterday, and I shared a tweet that Enterprise Nation put out, which said that owner directors who were on the pay-away scheme at the end of February could claim under the most recent measures, and I think that will become clear as government issues its guidelines and so on. But we need some clarity around that. I agree.
Okay, John, you've got your hand raised. Is that from before, or have you got another question?
Another question, if that's okay.
Okay, yeah. Oh, I love the dog.
Yeah, he's my little stress ball. So I think I kind of half touched on it, but I didn't actually follow through with it. So the furloughing of directors, I'm part of a few sort of support groups and like mini networking groups online, just so it's keeping in touch and sort of helping each other where we can. There's a lot of confusion over when you're furloughed as a director. There's quite explicit instructions saying you cannot do anything business related other than sort of maintenance things, and we really need a little bit of guidance on what can we do? Can we communicate with our customers? Can we speak to them on social media? Can we create content? Because there's some people that are adamantly saying, no, you cannot do any of that, otherwise you're not eligible for the support, and others are saying, no, you're fine doing it. So a bit of guidance and clarity on that would be really helpful.
Yeah, I mean, this again came up yesterday. I think that the furlough rules are very clear. You're right. You know, you cannot be working and claiming the furlough benefits. Clearly, company directors have a duty of care to their business, and they have legal responsibilities to deal and look after their business. And there's a slight contradiction there. If you say you can't do anything, well, how do you do the former? And I think I would say two things. One is I think that there will be some more clarity coming out over time. If you look at the Enterprise Nation website, they've done some quite good research on this, and they've been tweeting. I'm trying to find the tweet I shared yesterday, and I can't find it for a minute. But if I do, I find it before the end. I'll return to it. But I think the other point I would make, and you're not hearing this from me, but I heard a barrister being interviewed on Saturday night on a business program I was involved in, and he was saying that directors that take the furlough option and don't work, who may feel they need to do certain things, there's a question mark. There was a question mark in his mind that said, how would HMRC ever know whether or not they've done those things? And I just leave that out there without saying.
Yeah, the problem, the stuff I'm referring is it's lots of social media content, because a lot of what I do is customer driven and speaking to my clients and maintaining stuff. So I'm creating content. So there's, I know they're not going to come looking for it, but there's evidence out there that I'm creating stuff, even though they're only sort of advice and guidance, and it's not necessarily income driven at all, because there is no money to be gained from it. It's just keeping in touch with my customer base. But the problem is that people are fear mongering, that's saying that no, you shouldn't be doing anything.
Yeah, well, I think I think that's a line we've all got to consider and think about. My question would be, are some of these people your personal friends that you'd just be talking to regardless of whether or not you're in business?
Oh, they're business, yeah. There's other small businesses, and then come from accountants. There's so much literally blur out there. There's no real clarity from any reasonable party.
No, and I think we'll see some more clarity around that. Okay. But I think government will need to be pragmatic in its interpretation, and I think you need to be pragmatic in your interpretation of what you can and can't do. And I, as a government employee, even though I'm independent, there are certain things I can't do as small business commissioner, but I can do things as Phillip King that I wouldn't do as small business commissioner. Sometimes I do that. So I think we all have to sort of toe that line and work our way around it.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Mary, are you putting your hand up there? You are. Okay.
Yes. Yes. I know it's probably not relevant to a lot of you, but I'm putting the question out there just to see if anyone's got any ideas. Really, as I said, I'm a photographer. I've just changed this year. I managed to get myself 70 odd clients in the first year, so I'm fairly pleased with what I've done. I put a lot of money into a wedding fair. I managed to get some more clients and had about 12 weddings booked for this year, which I was really pleased with. Obviously, ringing around, I left people for a few weeks, but ringing around now, they are postponing or cancelling basically effectively my income. A lot of my core income for the year is gone. What I'm thinking about doing now is diversifying, and I'm offering some online homeschooling photography lessons for children, and I'm also looking at doing some product photography, which obviously means anyone local who's creating things. There's a lot of people out there at the moment who are being inventive and creative and want to sell their products. I was going to do that as well. That to me again is more advertising, more adverts, more LinkedIn adverts, and I've already put in a heap of my finances into actually marketing. So is there going to be any incentive for anyone who actually wants to support community, wants to actually help small businesses, and such as the ideas I've come up with?
Well, I guess my simple answer is I don't know, but I mean, well done you is all I'll say, because I think you're doing exactly what businesses need to do, which is thinking beyond the the short-term crisis and working out how you can capitalise on what is a horrible situation. And well done, because clearly you're doing a good job of it. So more power to you. I don't know is the honest answer. I've not seen anything talking about support in that direction yet. But we're in a moving feast, aren't we? And the world is changing so fast. And if this is, if this is a 3-month window, that'll be very different from if it's a 6-month or a 9-month window. And I think we'll have to watch and see what comes out. But well done, you did good stuff.
Sorry, can I just jump in? Have you spoken to the New Anglia Growth Hub, because they have grants for business, different business elements, so it might be worth speaking to whether that might come into that. So
okay,
good call, Paula. Good call.
Yep, thank you.
Some councils are also setting up similar funds for community-based projects, but I don't know whether yours will have that.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Sarah, did you want to? I see you got your hand up again. Did you want to ask a question?
Yes, please. It was really a point of information, really. Philip mentioned about the CBILS and the banks putting forward people to their normal lending schemes. CBILS itself has got some real flaws in it, because it actually says that you have to pass the normal eligibility criteria, which of course most businesses going in to get those loans now are not don't fall within the same eligibility criteria, because they're not necessarily seen as viable businesses. And so it's setting up a whole range of different tensions around this at the moment. So I just really was flagging that up, because it's a great scheme in theory. The banks aren't interpreting it well, and also there are some flaws within it.
That's true, Sarah, and I think also, there are 40 providers that are able to support it, and the big 5 high street banks are sort of overtly saying they're doing the right thing, but lots of the others possibly aren't. And there's a huge amount of complexity and sophistication and misinterpretation and lack of clarity around what is being done and what isn't being done and what's available. I think my only comment on that would be that there's so much noise about that this morning that is absolutely sort of taking over the airwaves, but I can't believe that isn't going to generate a pretty strong reaction from the banks and from government. So I'm hoping that will deliver some real clarity pretty quickly.
Okay, Pauline, did you have a question?
Yeah, it's not a question, it was really just picking up on what somebody else said, and it was to do with paying overheads and rents and stuff, and that landlords are not being very helpful. I was just looking at my phone to try and find the piece that I read. So on the government website, where you can go through and you can look at everything that's available in terms of the grants and the different loans and things, I read something on there, and I can't find it now, but if you'd like to, whoever raised that question, go and have a look. There's some information on the government website about the fact that if businesses are not paying their rent, that there'll be a certain leeway in terms of not evicting tenants, and that I'm sure that I read that it was, that action would not be taken until after June.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes.
Yeah,
I read that somewhere. So obviously you need a bit more detail behind that, but I think there is something in place from the government to stop landlords evicting because you've not paid rent.
Correct. Yeah, you can't. Landlords cannot evict for the next 90 days.
Yes.
So
is that commercial as well as personal? Because I thought it was only private.
It was personal, but I believe it's now commercial as well.
Yes. So you might want to just check out that website. Once you kind of navigate around it, it's pretty easy to find things on there. So have a look.
I'm pretty certain it is commercial as well now, but it's worth checking.
It is commercial, but the challenge is the payment's still due. It's just due in 90 days time.
Yeah, absolutely. But until you can claim
short-term cash flow relief.
Yeah, I think you're right, Lisa. It is. I think the important thing here is that if you're eligible for loans or furlough or whatever it is, and you've got to wait for that money to come through, this does at least give you a window in which you can not pay the rent while you're using that money for other things. In the same way as the tax delay and so on, means that people that have got money put aside to pay that can use that for other things in the short term.
Paula?
Yeah, sorry, just on the rent thing, we've had members that have raised to us that although you know, there's this eviction kind of thing in place now, it doesn't stop the landlords kind of following court proceedings to recover the money and to send bailiffs in the meantime. So I think that still needs to be tightened up, from my understanding. I checked with the FSB and they said, yeah, that is still the case. So
yeah, I think that's still possible. I think the reality is that the courts are slowing down massively what they're processing, and you know, everything is slowing down. So they may be able to continue proceedings, but getting those proceedings through the courts, I think, are going to be quite difficult. And I saw something about bailiffs yesterday. I'll try and find it while we're talking.
Tracy, did you want to ask a question?
Not so much a question, Carol, but just to come in as I mean, we're a social enterprise, but we're also a landlord. We have workspace all around Newcastle City Centre. And I think it comes back to, well, my advice to businesses would come back to what you said right at the start, Philip, which is about talking to your landlords, because we're aiming to provide support. We want our businesses to succeed. We want them to survive this. We want them to get through. And it's in our best interest to keep our current tenants. So we are working through lots of different agreements. We're talking regularly. We're making sure that we're supporting them as best we can. And I think from a landlord's perspective, that's good practice, because that's future income. There's only so much we can do, but certainly I would say that any of the businesses that are talking to us, whether they are our tenants or not, speak to the landlords and see if there's something that you can come up with outside of what the government are saying, really, because a lot of our tenants want to pay a little bit. They might not be able to pay the full rent this month, but they want to pay a little bit because we work together. We're a partnership as far as we're concerned. So I just wanted to add that in, really, just to say hopefully others will follow that same sort of practice.
Good point.
Okay, has anybody else got any questions? We're sort of coming towards the end of our time. We've probably got time for one more question if anybody's got it. No. Alex, did you want to come in at all and say anything?
It's just interesting, Carol, the perspective we're getting over the last 3 days is all very much the same, all focused on the smaller end of the businesses. It's looking at how rents and tenants are going to be able to afford what they're doing. And from my perspective, it's also listening to see where there's opportunities within local authorities. I know across Norfolk and Suffolk and Essex, the local authorities are actually creating their own funds to support businesses. And I would actually advocate ringing them and asking them and explaining your situation, very much as Philip's been saying, get the dialogue open and start saying what you can do rather than what can't be happening. And even if it is small measures, very much Tracy's point is that we've got tenants as well, which we manage, and we're having very individual conversations around whether or not we stop service charges, whether or not we're going to be giving them a 3-month rent period break. But it's all very much on a one-to-one basis. So yeah, and also picking up on Mary's point in terms of what she was looking at with regard to her freelance photography, there's stuff which is coming out through the Arts Council, which you may want to investigate as well. I know they're doing small grants for freelancers. And as I'm aware, there's also big funds which are being rolled out by Facebook for advertising and things like that. So it may well be looking at those avenues as well, just to try and get us all through this period of time where it is a little bit chaotic, to be fair.
Brilliant, thank you.
That's all right, no problem at all. Thanks, Carol.
Yeah, I mean, what I would say, obviously, as Philip said, if you've got anything that you want me to pass on to Philip, if you want to email it to me, because you'll all have my email address now, and I can certainly pass that on to Philip, and as he says, where appropriate, he can pass that on to the policy team, and obviously hopefully that could have some effect. But
Carol, can I ask a quick question? Sorry, just of Alex.
Yeah, sure.
Alex, Sorry, Alex, when you're talking about, because I'm talking to our local authorities, and one of the things that they came back with, they've asked if we know of any other local authorities that are providing support to those businesses that are falling through the cracks. So everything we've talked about today, that John's talked about, that Mary's talked about, if there are individual local authority packages, what I've heard from our local authorities is it would be really useful to know what they are and what they're doing so that they can use that as best practice to put it forward. Is there a list? You have any information?
Well, where I'm at, it's my personal contact, so I'm actually ringing up the economic development teams and some of the leaders of the council. If you want me to give you some details, Tracy, I'm more than happy to. Email Carol. She can then email me, and I'll give you some good contacts to talk to, because I know there are a few crisis meetings running within local authority areas, just looking at where they can pull funds in from, and then look at how they're directed in terms of supporting the businesses in their locality areas. More than happy to do that for you, Tracy.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
No problem at all.
John, are you putting your hand up there, or was you just waving? Oh, you're clapping. Okay.
I'm playing with the little things at the bottom. There's the first group.
Oh, you're okay. Okay. I think then if there isn't any further questions, I'd just really like to thank Phillip for again being involved in our question and answers. I think we've had a really good discussions this morning, and thank you everybody for attending. And like I say, if you've got stuff that you want to email over to me, please do so, and I will pass them on to the relevant person. So
Carol,
thanks very much, everybody.
Sorry, Carol, can I just, before we go, can I just say that if you've got businesses that you know of that need help struggling to get paid, please point them to the Small Business Commissioner. smallbusinesscommissioner.gov.uk is the website. We've got loads of advice on there. We're a free service and are happy to help small businesses that are struggling. So please get them to talk to us if you hear from them. And thank you for your time this morning.
Thank
you.
Perfect. Thank you,
very
Phillip.
much.
Carol.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers now. Bye-bye.
Okay.
Bye.
Cheers, guys. Bye.
Bye-bye.